And welcome everyone, students and alumni, for joining us this morning, evening for those of you in China, to our fourth and final career conversation event of the fall semester. Today, we're so honored to have two wonderful alumni who are joining us who are working abroad right now in China. And we're so happy to have them here to learn about their experiences and what is it like to be an engineer abroad. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Aaron Klein. I'm the Engineering Abroad Manager, and so happy to have you here to join us with this conversation. Just some information regarding the session. It is being recorded. I have a few questions here queued up that I'm going to ask our alumni in a bit, but please, for our students, ask any questions you'd like. There's the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom window. Please type in your questions. I will get those queued up. If it's to a specific alumni, please just address that question to them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleagues from the China Global Gateway office, Tina and Phoebe, who are going to tell us more about their role with Ohio State.
Well, thank you, Aaron. Hello, everyone. My name is Phoebe Yu. I'm the Senior Director of Ohio State's China Gateway office. Such a pleasure to partner with engineering to offer this session. I will introduce a little bit about the Gateway office and what we do here in China. But now I would like to invite my colleague Tina to introduce a little bit about herself.
Well, thank you, Phoebe. My name is Tina, and I also work for Ohio State University China Gateway office. And I'm originally from China, Shanghai, and actually Shanghai is also the city where our China office is located. I've been with Ohio State since 2014, so 6 years now, and I'm currently the Associate Director of the office. Thanks again for joining us today, and now I'll pass back the mic to Phoebe to tell you more about our office.
Thank you, Tina. Let me do the share screen here. I do prepared a couple slides just to help explaining what we do here. So the China Gateway office is the first official representative office for Ohio State. We're located here in downtown Shanghai in China, but we are actually here to serve as a liaison office for Ohio State to foster connections and facilitate opportunities for our students, faculty, alumni, and partners in Greater China region, including Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. So what we do specifically, I would summarize our functions into these three areas. We're here to provide support to our students. We're here to engage our alumni, and we're also here to facilitate our faculty to do research collaborations with their academic partners here. So I want to elaborate a little bit about the student support service. I think it's most relevant to all of you today. So we are here to help Ohio State to recruit the best students from the region. So we partner with our undergraduate admission office for information sessions, high school visit, college fairs, to help attract the best talent from the market, and also help addressing any questions they might have about Ohio State. And we're also here to provide support for our education abroad programs. Normally, every year from May to August, there will be 3 to 4 different education abroad programs, from like engineering programs to business programs to other general programs. We provide mostly logistics support to these programs, but we're also here to help these students to connect with our alumni clubs. So whenever these groups of students visit a city when we have alumni club, we will try to organize an event to welcome these students to help connect them with the Buckeyes on this side of the world. And also our office, starting a few years ago, starting to provide career services for those students who are interested in internship or job opportunities in China. This is actually a part of Tina's role. She has connections with many top brand employers here in the market. And every summer we do a summer summer career fair with a few other US schools. And also you will find internship and job postings on our WeChat platform, which is the main social media platform we use here in China. And so for any students, no matter you are domestic students or international student, if you're interested in opportunities in China, feel free to connect with me or Tina. We are happy to offer any kind of connections we have here. And we also understand with large number of Chinese students on campus, they might have issue integrating with the campus. That's why every semester we try to do a workshop focusing on Chinese culture and to try to help educate our faculty and staff about the culture these international students present on campus to just help these students to better integrate to the campus. And lastly, there is a feature program we started 6 years ago. It's called Pre-Departure Orientation Program. It's a partnership between Student Life and Undergraduate Admission Office. It's for incoming freshmen and their families. Usually those are Chinese students, but sometimes there could be international students who live in China. And it's a full-day program to help prepare these students and their families for their arrival on campus. And I also want to talk a little bit about the alumni engagement service. Today, you see we have two fabulous alumni, one from Hong Kong, one from Shanghai, to join us for the session. But there are actually many more Buckeyes here. We have 5 alumni clubs in Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and Taipei. They're all very active, especially in the fall season. If you travel during this time, there's a chance you can join us for the game watch. You will be surprised about the passion the Buckeyes have on this end of the world. They will watch the game at midnight. So, these are very briefly what we do here in China. I encourage you to connect with us. You will find my contact information after the session, maybe. We hope to connect with you. I hope you will have a good session this morning. Thank you. I will pass it back to Aaron.
Thank you so much, Phoebe, for that. And I hope our students understand what a great asset it is to have the global gateways and to have that global reach for Ohio State. So thank you for that, Phoebe and Tina. Well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our 2 alumni that we have here. I will allow them to introduce themselves. If they could also say when they graduated from Ohio State, what their current role is, and maybe if you'd like to share a current project that you're working on right now.
Shawni, why don't you go first?
Okay, I'll go first. So hi, my name is Shawni Chen. I'm a partner of PwC. Right now, I'm responsible for what we call Acceleration Center in Shanghai, which providing services, technical services to our client globally. I am in class 1994, so a very old timer now, old Buckeyes. And, really appreciate, Phoebe and Tina, and they have found me a couple years back through LinkedIn, because back then I was looking for other Buckeyes in the city. I was not able to find on my own. Phoebe actually found me through the LinkedIn. So ever after that, I have been working, with the Gateway, and also we are one of the sponsors for the Ohio State's intern programs, as well as the mentor programs. So it's I'm very happy to be, speaking to all the other Buckeyes in the States now. Hey, Raymond.
Okay, so my name is Raymond Cole. I graduated 1999, so not far behind Shawni. I was a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering, and currently I'm the General Manager for Sourcing and Product Development for a company called Meiyume. We do cosmetics and healthcare products solutions for brand names. The company is based in Hong Kong, and I actually just started this role 1.5 months back. We are starting to talk to the Gateway to start an internship program, and we also have some openings that Phoebe and Tina is helping to share with students or alumni. So happy to be joining the panel this morning.
Thank you, Raymond and Shawni, for that. So the first question I'd like to start off is somewhat broad, but I think it will sort of give us a foundation. What do you see sort of as the main difference in your role and in the engineering field abroad compared to here in the US? What are some differences that you're seeing in your day-to-day there in China and Hong Kong?
Shawni, you want to start first?
Yeah, let me unmute. Yeah, sure. So I'll talk a little bit. Actually, it's quite very different, I would say, because I think when I was back in the U.S., actually, I was after the graduate, I worked in the States for 9 years. I was a computer engineering major, so my inspiration was staying on the technical track, eventually become a enterprise architect, right? So because I'm a computer engineering major, so that's what I want to do, become an architect, which you can design larger system implementation. Because it never came across to my mind that there's other type of the work in the engineering fields possible, you know, for me or Chinese engineers in US, right? So I came back early 2003, I think in the 2003, and when China was just entering a new era, you know, trying to look at for digitizations. And the first few months actually is very challenging because, you know, I'm trying to get used to the cultures, understand, you know, how everything works, and also understand, you know, the people relationships is very different, right? How working US versus working China. Chinese is more care about saving face. They may tell you one thing, but they may not mean different. So it was a little bit adjustment I have to go through. But once I get used to it, I notice actually there are a lot of opportunity in an emerging market because China back then is still a developing market. Until this day, I would say they're still developing very fast. So there's a lot of opportunities in there. So I start to see a different possibility for where I can grow my career. So, and so I start to take more leadership roles, more managerial roles. And now actually, many years later, I never dreamed I would become a general manager, also a partner who managing a side of, you know, about 1,200 engineers. So that was never in my roadmap if I stayed in US. So that's one of the biggest difference I noticed, right? Coming into a developing country, you will see more opportunities. You might not have a lot of people who can provide you coaching and guidance because the market is so young. But if you are willing to take a leap forward, right, to be brave, and you will notice there's a lot of new areas, and there you will notice there's a lot of possibilities which you never knew exist. So that's one thing I noticed, you know, from working in a mature market, US versus in a developing, you know, international market. Okay. Great.
Yeah, my experience is slightly different. I also started working in the US after graduation. I worked for an automotive supplier based in Ohio as a design engineer for a couple years. And then I came back to Hong Kong about 2001. And I started working for a Taiwanese company, Foxconn. You guys probably know it. And I was serving Cisco at the time. And so to me, engineering is still engineering. I think the science, the technical portion of it stays pretty much the same, but what is different is how people approach issues or solutions and how they communicate. It's something more because of the culture you have to get used to. But otherwise, if you go back to basic on facts, I found slightly less challenging on that side of things. And I also agree with Shawni that since the 2000 rolls by, things are developing really fast, except especially in the recent years. The internet, deep learning, all the computer science and the technology field is developing really fast here, and there are a lot of opportunities.
Thank you both for that. And I think, Shawni, you had mentioned you never, when you're back here at Ohio State, you never would have envisioned sort of your career where it is right now. And that's something that I wanted to ask you, because I working for PwC as an engineer, oftentimes people hear PwC and think of, Big Four accounting firm on the business side. Could you maybe speak to the opportunity, the unique opportunity of being an engineer and how you're able to sort of get into that sector where maybe some of our engineering students wouldn't necessarily think of that route for their career?
Okay, yeah, so the Big Four, right? So the Big Four people will think about only for tax and assurance. Actually, all the Big Four have another business, which is for advisory. So for the consultings. So they actually help clients to solving some of the business problem. Right now, everywhere you go, there are people talking about digitizations. So you solving a business problem, you have always to use digital solutions, and that's where all the engineers come into place. So that's how I started basically, implementing systems for my clients, right, to solving their business problems. So that's that part, where you can find opportunity within the Big Four. Then there's also a huge movement within the Big Four themselves, try to identify new ways to digitize how consulting, how the tax people, how the auditors is working. Because early on, if you're looking at the accountants, probably a lot of stuff has been done on paper-based, Excel-based. Now, people are looking into automate that, right? Using the latest process automation tools, using the latest visualization tools, also the data-driven, right? So like if you did a tax last year, and we predict how your tax will look like for this year, vice versa, right? Maybe even in the future, they can help you from your tax reports. They can give you some advice how you're managing your this year's business portfolios. So those are the type of things that's happening within Big Four. They are trying to automate how their own work is, and they need a lot of engineers. They need computer engineers. They need data scientists. They need, all sorts of, the math majors as well, right? Try to help them to build these models. So that's why I say don't let go the consulting opportunity. It's also very exciting. Yeah.
And I think for some of our students, understanding sort of that holistic approach that a lot of these companies are taking now in terms of the globalization and moving from that developing to a developed country. I think there are, as you said, a lot of opportunities for our students in that regard. Raymond, a question for you. I know you'd mentioned you worked with Foxconn and Cisco, which I feel like are sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, household names in terms of global corporations. And you've also worked with, smaller, more regional based companies as well. Could you sort of talk about what those experiences were like, both for you as an engineer and also just in terms of the global context or the company culture when it came to globalization?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned I worked for Foxconn. I also worked for Cisco, and then I also worked for NVIDIA, which is in the graphical chip business, and a couple other companies. So I worked for U.S. companies based here. I worked for Taiwanese company, and when I started out, I worked for a Japanese company. So I think what I learned from those experiences that people, there are differences in people and how they approach problems. And so be patient and understand the differences. And, when you come down to it, it's not so much of the technical side of things that is the bigger problem in terms of globalization. It's more, how you communicate, how you work with different people, resolve the differences, and in the end, it do fall back to the more technical side of things, and that's always the constants, and your solutions mostly are based on that.
Thanks, Raymond, for that. And Shawni, I'd like to sort of pose a similar question, because I see in your background, you have some experience working in my home state of Illinois and in rural Illinois for State Farm. And then I know that you were in the Northeast before you went back to China. Can you sort of talk about that culture change? Because I'd imagine, Bloomington, Illinois, and Shanghai, China, very different in terms of the culture. And I think some of our students see that, whether they come from rural Ohio or maybe they come from a big city, New York, LA, and now they're here in Columbus. Could you sort of talk about that culture change for you when you were working full time?
Okay. I think the culture shock for me 10 years back is slightly different than now, right? So I'll give you the new culture shock you will experience when you come to China. So when I first came back to Shanghai, that was almost 20 years ago now. So the biggest culture shock is the number of people. So everywhere I go, there's always people on the street, right? And there's always line. In the States, I go to a bank, I can take care of my business within 10 minutes. But in China, back then, I go to the bank, I have to wait for 1 hour to get business done. So you just have to respect, this, it's a huge country. There's a lot of people. It has to learn to be patient. I think that's one of the biggest things. But nowadays, if you come into China, you will be also culture shock by how digitized this place is, right? Every time, because I host a lot of US visitors who come into our centers, one thing they're amazed about it is literally nobody's using credit cards. Nobody is using cash in Shanghai anymore. Everything is done via WeChat payments, Alipay, even down to the smallest side vendor, right? They have a QR code where you can pay. Sometimes we joke, even the beggars, the homeless on the streets, they have a QR code so people can scan, pay the money. So that probably is one of the largest culture shock, from how we envision a China would be, right? From Kung Fu Panda, everybody, rice field, wear this interesting hats. When you come into Shanghai, you notice everything is completely different. And in a way, it's even some of the digitization, even more advanced than US is, right? And you go on the street, you see a lot of, another thing you're going to see is share bike, right? We call it mobike. Everywhere, it's a shared services and people can go there and you can just scan the car and pick up any bike and you can, ride the bike in the city. So those are the subtle difference, but actually will bring some culture shock for people. Then another thing probably you will notice is nowadays if you come in, you will notice, I don't, because I live in the city now, I don't notice, and a lot of my colleagues tell me is how beautiful Shanghai is. So everywhere you go, you'll see the flowers. On the highway and the dividers is filled with flowers, and the streets extremely clean, right? Because they have dedicated these cleaning people actually cleans like twice a day. So it's a very pleasant experiences that you're coming into it. It's a reverse culture shock, but there's still a lot of people. There's still a lot of people if you go on the street, especially during weekends, right? If you're coming from Ohio and into Shanghai in the weekends, and you'll be amazed how many people are there.
Well, you bring up a good point there, Shawni, in terms of sort of just that shock of seeing the digitization and the bike share. I know that's something that's sort of been new here in the States. And I think oftentimes as sort of our Western minds think, we sort of think of the American way as the right way. But oftentimes we're looking and seeing these innovations that are happening in other countries, whether that be some of the Nordic regions or in the Asian countries, in terms of sort of that technology and how that's shifting and moving here to the US. And I think sometimes we're maybe a few years behind the trend. Could you both, and feel free either of you to start off, just sort of talk about how you see that trend and that movement, oftentimes where China might be a few years ahead of the US, but with both of you and your experiences with some of these multinational corporations, sort of how you see that day to day in your work.
So Raymond, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I wanted to add to what Shawni was saying. Even I, coming from Hong Kong into Shenzhen or Shanghai, I got the cultural shock how digitized it was. I got cash in my hands, and there's no way I can pay for cab. There's no way I can order food. So you can't go anywhere without the WeChat right now in China. So speaking of the working experience nowadays, even especially now during the COVID times, people are more and more used to working remotely, working with virtual tools, Zoom and Teams and that kind of tools. And so back maybe a couple of years, people are still not picking up on that one yet, because culturally over here, people like to be face-to-face. People would like to work in the office together, and they're more used to that way. But I think the pandemic is really bringing change to how people work over here. Because I mentioned that I work for Cisco. Cisco was very used to digitization. So we work remote all the time. We're calling from anywhere into conferences. And so, I was very much used to this, but I see a lot of people, this is just the beginning. And then I see as people adopt to this a little bit more, there's no going back. This might be the way to work going forward. Shawni?
Yeah. So I think, Aaron, you were asking, comparing with the West and China, how this innovation goes. The way I view it right now, I think both countries have a huge focus on innovations, but they are taking slightly different approaches. I think, like I say, US is a very mature market. So all the innovation, there's a lot of, they've been done in very methodical ways, right? There's a lot of testing being done. There's a lot of validations. Before you hit a market, you have to go through a lot of testings, right? So that's why I see there's a very scientific approach for innovations in the States. I may be wrong, but my observation in China is I would say it's more like a Wild West. It's a less mature, and there's not a formal methodology in place for innovation. But then again, it's a wild open market. Everybody can go there. If you have an idea, you go try it. And if you success, great. If you fail, right? Nobody cares. You have to pay your own consequences, basically, right? So there isn't a very methodical ways. So that's why you have a lot of .coms, a lot of things was booming, but I would call hardcore level engineerings. I found China is still lacking. Although China is pretty good on digitization and e-commerce, but if you look at these, the medical advancements, right? Even in the semiconductor area, as these innovations is far less than US. But then again, it also opens up a lot of opportunity for the young people who come in, right? You have your US education, you understand how everything works. So you can bring this experience actually making change in this Wild West, right? So I think that's how I see it right now. The comparing the two different countries, right? So
I completely agree with the Wild West analogy. I would use that as well.
And I think, kind of going back to that comparison of just sort of the Western mindset, the American mindset is that, when we look to China, I think we often see Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing as these global hubs. But in reality, there are so many other cities and regions in China where this innovation or wild, wild west is happening. Could you share some of those other regions where you're seeing some of that innovation that maybe us as Americans would not necessarily think of when we think of the innovation coming out of China?
Go ahead, Shawni.
No, I was just going to say the maglev, right? So these are high-speed trains. That's one of the things. Actually, I was watching a documentary. They are testing some driverless megatrends in China. So right now, those are actually was very, very leading in the world. Nobody's doing that one. Okay. So another thing kind of interesting from the rural area in China is the the solar energies, right? So I think in US, you really, we don't really have that issue. So you don't have, enough energy supply because there's just isn't enough people in there. You have more supply. China has a very reverse issues. There's more people and there's not enough natural resources. So there's a lot of innovation coming from that space. So let's say, how do you leverage, solar energies, right, to help these rural areas. So those are, the different areas having different problems. When you find a problem, that's where the innovation starts happening.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think a lot is coming out of building roads, building infrastructures in China, and the way you say it, when there's a need, then there is a solution that resolve the problem at hand. So I think that's the source of it.
Shawni, you had mentioned sort of the idea of leveraging, and I sort of want to pivot that to the two of you and your own experiences. Oftentimes, whether it be us in OIA and education abroad or career services, academic advisors here on campus, we always tell students to leverage their experiences to help them get to that next step, whether that be an internship or grad school or the next job. Could the two of you share sort of how you were able to leverage your talents to get to where you are today?
I can go first. So I think, like I said, because when I first moved back to China, right, I feel my biggest advantage over the local resource is my technical know-how, right? My programming skill, etc. Without realizing, some of the skill I have is too advanced for the market to accept at that time. So I was struggling actually to getting a job, but that was, keep in mind, that was 20 years back, right? So all the people who are interview me and they're much younger. So the design I was talking about it is just too advanced for them to absorb a lot of time, the computer design, because they don't have that issue yet at that time. The China wasn't digitized enough, so they don't encounter that issue. So, but later on, what I noticed is the things I can leverage most is my US working experiences and my understanding of the cultures, my understanding about how US, the US people's thinking, right, and professionally as well as day-to-day life, what they're discussing about. So that actually becomes one of my unique advantages. Back in 2003, China's just continue opening up and trying to do export and importing and bringing a lot of business into China, and there are lacking of people who understand both cultures, right? So I understand Chinese culture, understand US culture, and plus I have the technical knowledges in some of the fields. So that sort of become my unique advantages there. So I think in summary is, so when you get to a new culture, maybe just step back a little bit and try to reevaluate what do you have in your backpack, right? There are areas you may take for granted when you're US, actually could potentially become a add-on for you, a plus, right, when you're into the new care areas.
Okay. I share a very similar experience. Having been to the States and worked in the States and coming back here, I can understand both working styles and I can understand both cultures, and so it makes it easier for me to help bridge the gap between the two, and for somebody from the Midwest in the U.S. and in Shenzhen, how do they work together? And sometimes the not so much the language barrier, but how they get the ideas across is somewhat different. And so I have the somewhat unique ability to help them communicate and understand each other and get on the same page. And right in this day and age is how you collaborate, how you work with people. That's quite an important element in the day-to-day work. And so, being able to help with that portion and having technical knowledge to that piece also helps. So I'd say, both the communication and the technical knowledge is a big plus.
And this is a perfect segue into a question that we had submitted directly to the panelists. And I'm going to read it verbatim. And I think this applies not just to this student, but to really all students that are attending. So they say, I'm really interested in working abroad at some point after graduation, but I have struggled to get my application seen by employers due to what I assume is a hesitancy to bring someone in from another country. Having started working in the US and moving to China, do you have any suggestions for getting hired in another country? Should they aim for countries directly or get a job in the US with a multinational company and then get transferred through that role?
I can go first. I think if you are not a China national, right? So right now coming into China to get a job, there are some limitations here to apply for working visa. So for the Chinese working visa, it requires you to have a minimum 2 years experience. All right, so you can get the working visa. There are a couple options. I think one of the options, and I think, you just talk about it, Aaron just talked about it, find the multinationals that are working there first. Now, another option is there's a lot of university has a collaboration programs with their Chinese sister, university, right? Go for, what I say, go for another sort of a study abroad program. School can help you to apply for a student visa, which they can also help you to apply for internship visa. So that way will allow you to try, work abroad before you even graduate, right? So those are, I think, a two approach you can definitely try.
Okay, so I would suggest, Hong Kong's actually is slightly easier in terms of work visa. So there might be a gateway for you to start working in Hong Kong and then eventually go work in mainland if that's where you want to be for some time. But and also, I think there is a lot of information on LinkedIn. If they are posting on LinkedIn, I think they're slightly more open to hiring people that are not Chinese nationals. And the third way I would suggest is get in touch with the Gateway office, Phoebe and Tina. And I think they have some connections that would be able to connect you with people who are actually looking for students from abroad.
And
Yes.
by all means, Phoebe and Tina, if you'd also like to add, please.
Sure. I want to mention like some of the top like internet companies like Alibaba or Tencent, they even have a program just specifically offering to foreign students. These are primarily for research related projects and a lot are in the computer science engineering field. So I don't know with the undergrad background if you can apply to those, but with like a master or PhD background, you can definitely, get a apply to those programs. And also another way, as Shawni mentioned, yes, take advantage of those study abroad program or exchange program or collaborative degree program. So you can spend at least one semester or a few months in China, and that way you can take classes for like 2 or 3 days a week, and then you can do an internship on the other days. Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect segue into the next question that I have, because I do think that we have a lot of students that have an interest to work abroad, go abroad perhaps for graduate school, but at least sort of test out that international market. And oftentimes one of the big things that we talk about in OIA, Office of International Affairs, is we want to develop our students to be global citizens. By the time that they graduate and they walk across the stage of the shoe, we want them to be global citizens. Raymond and Shawni, can you sort of talk about sort of how you see global citizenship in terms of employability in the field of engineering?
Yeah, I think the global mindset is very critical, especially in my field, because what a lot of in the software computer areas, there's a lot of exchange of informations, right? Local company with international, and there's a lot of movements. So understand the cultural difference, understand the working difference, understand the technology difference, also the reason behind why these technology applies under these situations will be a huge plus, right? So that's, I think, what international mindset can really bring in. And the other thing I always ask, share with the students is be curious about the stuff you're seeing and constantly asking questions. That's how you learn and can help you to become more effectively as a global citizens. Then the third point, I think is, I think U.S. education has prepared you very well is the critical thinking skills. Okay, and that's why what I see the next international global citizen or global mindsets will need is that you constantly asking questions, probing, try to finding the answers, and don't take things at surface. And that can help you definitely to build up these skills and quickly, help you to get engaged with your local companies or local friends. So.
Yeah, I would say, keep an open mind and understand the differences. It's, may not be the way you are used to seeing things done, but it's don't look at things like it's right or wrong, but it's differences and why and where they come from. I think that helps a lot, and also keep your focus on the problem itself. I think engineering is in the business of solving problems. And so if you focus on that one, all the other things is just noise. And so be very, very receptive to understand the differences. That will go a long way in helping you work with, the global citizenship, all people from different places around the world.
Raymond, I want to sort of pass it back to you in a follow-up to that, because I know that you got your master's at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And so could you sort of talk about what it was like to go from, an American university to then do your master's degree abroad, and maybe, a bit of advice for some of our students that maybe they want to pursue a master's degree abroad?
Yeah, sure. I think that this might not be too good of an example because Hong Kong University of Science and Technology hires a lot of professors from the US, and they mostly go by, it's like a US system. So, credits, and you have a lot of freedom, picking your own classes and things like that. So I think academically, I didn't feel that much of a difference from, let's say, Ohio State. But I think the students themselves over here, I think the mindset is slightly different, and so they are somewhat reserved in asking questions, not like in the States that people are straightforward and very direct and would ask, or would say whatever on their mind. So I think maybe the how you work with the students over here might be a little bit different. I'm not sure if that's the same experience as in mainland universities.
Please, Phoebe and Tina, if you have any bits of advice to add, or Shawni as well from your experience regarding just a desire for students to go abroad for grad school.
I think for the top Chinese universities like Peking University, Tsinghua, Shanghai Jiao Tong, Fudan, they all offer like specialized global master programs. It's all done in English. Actually, their faculty are mostly holding like a foreign degree from the Western countries, from US or UK. So those are high quality program, and I think those are great opportunity because they're also offering scholarship. Oftentimes it's full scholarship to cover both your tuition fee and also your living expense, to attract students to come and study abroad in China. I know there were Fisher students who take advantage of those kind of programs, who did a 1-year program at Peking University, and he has done many projects, and he was able to get the direct guidance from his mentors, making tons of friends, and getting really understand the culture here. Because I think for study abroad, if it's too short, if it's just a couple weeks, you might get a taste of Chinese food, but you don't really get a good understanding of the culture. To be able to gain enough knowledge to work in this environment, I think you need to spend enough time, at least a full year, and then try to take advantage of the language learning opportunity, try to pick up the language, and that will help you also understanding the culture better. Actually, at Ohio State, we have such a good East Asian language program. The Chinese language program is great. And I think a lot of the even faculty or staff, they took advantage of that, take the Chinese 101, and that's a good start. So if you're interested, feel free to contact the Gateway office. We're here and we have the point of contact for you.
Well, one other question I think in terms of that employability is that we have so many opportunities here at Ohio State, whether it be education abroad, whether it be studying a language, whether it be internships, or just taking part in some of the global initiatives here on campus. For our students that are sitting right now, whether it be at home or in their dorm or in their apartment, Raymond and Shawni, what are just some practical things that these students could do so they are prepared for an international career where they can be competitive in the global market?
Let me take a minute, think through that one. Raymond, if you have a point of view, you should go first.
Okay. I think one of the challenges, even when I went to the States, it's the language, and not how good or bad you are, but the sheer experience that you have a lot of people around you, speaking in the completely different language. So I think one of the things that would prep you is there are a lot of opportunities, like at OSU or even on internet, that you can start picking up the language and start learning English or learning the local language on the internet, and then that might kind of brace you from the sheer shock that when you step into the country.
Yeah, so the language is definitely one thing. I totally agree. I think that was one of the things you need to spend a little bit of time to understand. Now, another thing is because when you come into the China, you might want to get a understanding of the surrounding culture a little bit. So one of the easy things to do is try to pick up international newspapers, right? Try to read through that. There's like China Daily or whatever, right? At least you understand what are the larger companies in China. What are some of the current events happenings? So that will help you when you learn the language, or when you start coming to the place, start to have a conversation with the local people. You have a topics besides talking about the weather, right? So you can have some common language to start with. I think those are a few things I think can start to prepare. Then the other thing you can always do is there's enough Chinese students on Ohio State campus, right? Just reaching out, make friends, and tell them you wanted to, let's say, working in China, so asking them to give you advice, right? And they can definitely become your network into the country as well.
Those are all fantastic, and something I'm going to do here as we're near the end. I'm going to drop a few links in the chat for our students, one of which is the Engineering Abroad events that we have for the rest of the fall semester into the spring. I'll also include the China Gateway link there as well, and something else that Shawni, you bring up an excellent point, and Raymond, in terms of engaging with our Chinese students here on campus, that we have an Office of Global Engagement within OIA, and that's their sole purposes of putting on these events for our international students, but also connecting international students with domestic students, whether that be sort of English conversation programs or other sort of just fun interactive events. So I'll put those links there in the chat. And I guess sort of one final question I'll just pose to the two of you, and feel free if you have anything else to share, please do. But in terms of as students are kind of, maybe they're going to refine their resume or their CV after this, and sort of try to find those employable skills. What is it that if you were sitting reading student resumes or applications from students here in the U.S., what is it that you'd be looking for that would sort of be that win that would say, yes, this is a student that you think is ready to work in an international market?
I can go first, right? So I think a technical skill, the relevant technical skill is important. That's one thing, the first thing we'll look at it. Then the second one we'll start to look at it is the extracurriculums. It's like if you are taking some leadership roles in, I don't know, some of the club activities, or if you have other prior intern experiences. I think those will be very important, because that's going to set you apart, right? And then if you have other interesting events, like if you are participating in some of the NGOs, even if you are doing some giving back to the society type of events, right? If you have done that, you should definitely list it on resume, because that's going to set you apart. So what, at least from PwC perspective, I know a lot of multinational probably looking at that as well. We're still very much a US culture. So we are looking for a well-rounded professionals, not just people who understand how to write program. We are looking for people who have a good communication skills, willing to give back to the societies and willing to take the leadership. So it's just well-rounded. So you might want to start to shaping your resumes in that area if the multinational is what you're looking for. And for I think for some of the local companies, MNCs, definitely highlight your technical skill. And if you have any relevant Chinese experiences, or if you have ever traveled to China before, or Hong Kong, or somewhere, speaking the language, you have that level, highlight that as well, because I think that will resonate very well for these local and also the SOEs.
Yeah, pretty much along the same lines. I think technical ability, that's a given. And then your working experience, be that part-time or internship. And also going back to one point that Shawni made earlier is if you have studied abroad programs in China, I think that would definitely be a plus on your resume. And showing your well-roundedness in terms of your extracurricular activities, being very active, being very sociable, very easy to work with people. I think those are all pluses.
Phoebe and Tina, feel free to add anything else that you can think of as, as an employer in China.
Tina probably has more experience on this because she interacts with employers all the time.
I really want to echo what Shawni has mentioned. Try to bring all of you, draw a portrait of you on your resume. If you haven't traveled abroad, but you can probably put in your extracurricular activities, your student club activities, or anything relevant to show that you have an open mind and you are able to communicate with diverse people with a different background and perspective, and you have experience working with a diverse group. That could show the employer that you are qualified for such a global role.
Yeah. Another thing I think I want to add is, certifications, right? If you associate with some professional organization like IEEE, if you're a member of IEEEs, right? So list those on your resumes as well, right? Because that's not only demonstrate your technical skill, but also demonstrate your social skill because you're reaching out, participate in these extra professional activities. So I think those will be very beneficial as well.
Well, thank you, Raymond and Shawni, for this excellent hour of conversation. I know I am feeling so filled up just hearing about, for students that are sitting here in Columbus, that these are possibilities down the road, that really, not only do we have a global campus, as Tina and Phoebe sort of echoed with the China Gateway, but that there are so many opportunities for our alumni. So I know I certainly am walking away with a lot after this conversation, and certainly I hope our students do as well. But thank you, Raymond and Shawni, just for giving us an hour of your evening on a Friday night right before Halloween. Thank you so much for that. And for our students, thank you for being here this morning. I did drop those 3 links to the global engineering events, the China Gateway, and as well as the global engagement. Do really take a look at some of those events that are being offered. Even though, we can't, physically be with each other, for some of these close contact events, there is a lot happening at OIA. We have a lot of virtual events just like this that we're doing every week. Within the College of Engineering, we actually have 3 international courses that we're going to be offering in the spring. So if you click on that engineering events webpage, you'll see more about that. But we're going to be offering 3 international virtual courses that we're going to be doing this exact sort of engagement with some of our international partners around the world. So I'd highly recommend exploring that, explore what the China Gateway has to offer. They have some fantastic events, as well as the Global Engagement Office and OIA. Just some wonderful, wonderful things that you can be doing to get involved and to sort of put these things onto your resume for the future. So again, I want to say thank you, Raymond, thank you, Shawni, thank you, Phoebe and Tina for this wonderful event. I hear Phoebe shares with me that I believe you said the Beijing Alumni Club is having a watch party tomorrow with the Penn State alumni for the game.
Yes,
is that true?
Yes. So they're doing the first game watch
Yes.
this fall. They're really looking forward to that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, of course, we hope for a Buckeye win, but that's so great to see that there is that the friendly rivalry between the alumni groups abroad. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you again. Thank you, students. Have a wonderful weekend and go Bucks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.